The name's Mabus, and Twilight Princess's dungeons were top-notch and very difficult to rank. And you know what? Its boss fights were no different. Now, I will be limiting this list to the main bosses only. Mini-bosses won't make the cut. And the easiest way to tell the difference between the two is that mini-bosses usually only have one stage to the fight and are typically found mid-dungeon. And the main bosses, on the other hand, have multiple stages and are found at the end of the temple. This is key knowledge in leading into this list. This fight starts off looking promising. You have a long descent to the depths of the Lakebed Temple with your iron boots equipped, and the tension starts to build as to what exactly you'll find down here that you'll encounter. And let me tell you, it's kinda underwhelming. For the most part, you just sort of stand there, locked onto a target with your claw shot, just waiting for the eyeball to get within grappling range, while its tentacles that you can't outrun always seem to interrupt you by grabbing a hold of you. A little infuriating, really. But the second part of this battle is where things pick up. Or at least they would if Morfield would fight back. Sure, the stage of this fight is a lot cooler by swimming around chasing a giant leviathan throughout this massive room filled with water, but once you realize that all you are doing is mercilessly slaughtering a defenseless creature, the badassery of the fight somewhat dissipates, and leaves you feeling slightly guilty. So who really was the boss of the Lakebed Temple? Maybe it was us all along, and Morfield just got a game over. I'm gonna be kinda honest. I don't really get what everyone sees in this boss fight. It's supposed to be the GOAT, but to me, it's just kinda there. Now don't get me wrong, as you can see by the out of 10 counter in the corner, it does still fetch a pretty decent score. But best in the series? Not sure about that one. Sure, riding on your spinner and busting out his spine while bouncing off the undead soldiers like a pinball was pretty fun. And to me, the first half of the fight was more entertaining than the second. But I do like how the fight was broken up by raising the center platform, making it seem as if you've already won, with Stallard's skull just sitting there beside you like a trophy, only to reanimate and come back for a second helping of pain cake. The second half, however, I don't know. I'm a big fan of suspension of disbelief. The idea where you can take something slightly fake, stretch it enough to make it seem real. Like riding atop to fight the skeleton of a giant monster that was cursed. Not too realistic, but has enough backstory to stretch it to seem real enough in the moment for me not to question it. But now start jumping this Beyblade over a seemingly 50-foot gap after chasing a floating head in circles? Yeah, that's kind of where the suspension of disbelief snapped for me. As fast-paced and fun as it was, it lost major points for being kind of ridiculous and too far out of place to keep me in the zone. At least he fights back, though. I was debating putting Ganon on this list since he is the final boss after all. And damn, forget the 2 stages, this MFer has 4. But he is the boss of Hyrule Castle, which is a dungeon, so technically he makes the list. But based on how long this fight is, it makes it hard to rank. You got the first stage of Possessed Zelda Light Orb Tennis, which I'm never the best at. Then you get the Beast Ganon fight. This is cool in Twilight Princess in particular because of the fact that you spend a good chunk of the game in beast form yourself. So to go head to head against Beast Ganon in Beast Link form for the first time in Zelda history is actually quite poetic. And the key to beating him in this form is literally the same tactic you use at the very beginning of the game when you wrestle goats. A skill that you've had since the start. It's not really my favorite of the 4 stages, but damn, I can appreciate the little touches like that. From there we travel to Hyrule Field for the next stage of the fight. On horseback. I like this. Even if it is difficult and rage-inducing whenever I get knocked off my horse by the ghosts. The cowboy-like style of chasing on horseback while Zelda is riding passenger, sniping Ganondorf with her light arrows while you move in with your sword for an attack.
So adrenaline pumping.
And it's super easy to get lost in the moment during this stage of the battle. And to finish it off, the last stage of the fight. One-on-one. Mono-e-mono. Sword v sword. A fight to the death. My favorite part of this fight is when you parry one of Ganon's attacks in the form of test of strength between the two warriors, which I make damn sure I win. That's more important to me than the rest of the battle. Now, I'm not absolutely terrified of spiders like most people. Now, sure, I would prefer not to be near them, but for the most part, if I see one, I wouldn't be running and screaming in the opposite direction. Just a little grossed out. And Armagoma does just that. Creepy and gross. Especially the way it's designed, and how it crawls on the walls and ceilings. And good God! It just gave fucking birth! But once you get past those initial disturbing parts, these things actually benefit the boss fight quite a bit. It really feels like how a proper Zelda boss would and should be like. A giant creepy monstrosity found in the deep cobweb corners of a dungeon. Perfectly cliche if I do say so myself. And the fight itself is actually pretty cool. The way it shoots lasers at you out of the eye on its back by magnifying the sunlight coming through the ceiling is a nice touch. But the way you deal with this pest is more than satisfying enough for the cringe that you have to put up with. By harnessing the power of the Dominion Rod, you take control of one of 4 massive statues with big fists and absolutely pummel the shit out of this giant arachnid. So damn satisfying. And sure, the second half of the fight is a little easy and cheesy. But hey, I fell for the fake out as Link sheathed the sword. And you know what? I can't really complain. It's a nice little touch to keep you on your toes. Usually when you get towards the end of Zelda games, you come across a point where you need to replay or revisit old bosses or boss rooms, either in the form of Link's memories, or just their large identical twins that you need to dispose of in the exact same way. But Twilight Princess, however, has a bit of a twist. This time there is story and character to go along with it that is relevant to the plot, so it's not just a copy-paste filler-like feeling like in other games. And the fight with Zant does this extremely well, and is an excellent example of how this sort of revisiting old bosses should work, where Zant teleports you to previous arenas you fought in before, with similar tactics to defeating him at each respective location that you visit. Almost as if the first time around was a variation of a Phantom Zant. Somehow like a part of him and his fighting strategies were bestowed on the curses he left behind in the original boss rooms. And to top it all off, right before you finish the job, Zant transports you to a location right outside Hyrule Castle and throws everything he has at you in a last-ditch effort to try and take you out. This part is new, and although there is no special tactic to use to defeat him, it perfectly illustrates just how desperate the cool, calm, and calculating Zant has become when the frustration of failure kicks in and he realizes he isn't going to make it. An excellent characteristic of a villain. I always forget about this boss, and to be 110% honest, I really shouldn't. Whenever I think of the boss of the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess, I always seem to think of Ook. Perhaps it's because he's the boss of the monkeys that plays such a big role in the dungeon. Or maybe it's because where you fight him is a stage of the Zant battle that is revisited. Or maybe it's because he actually is in the main boss fight, but this time as an ally. After defeating the ridiculously easy first stage of Diababa, your bondling plants get destroyed, and the main body of the Twilight parasite reveals itself. With no way to combat it now, and its much scarier version now active, Diababa seems to be quite threatening. And just to add to your problems, it seems that Ook, the mini-boss, is back for seconds, ziplining above your head like some distracting menace. It was at this point I thought to myself, lovely, the difficulty curve sure is spiking early, isn't it? That was until Ook turns around with a bombling in his hands. This baboon motherfucker is on our side. And the way you use your new boomerang to multi-lock onto Ook's bombs as he is zipping overhead, and then proceed to send them straight into the chompers of Diababa is just so damn cool. What a way to start off the first boss of the game. If the setup for this wasn't already epic enough with its beastly cinematics and storyline, then the fight itself will definitely do the trick. It all starts off when you actually get to witness firsthand just how something gets possessed by an evil entity for a change, as opposed to just stumbling across it after the fact. And wow, is the
psychological damage
something else. The jarring mood whiplash of slowly watching Yenna's head twitch and her speech glitch out right before going full exorcist and spinning her head 180 degrees or more with a blood-curdling scream is enough to get you a new set of pants. And
we're not done yet!
Now the storm kicks up, the windows blow in, and some wicked organ music gets that adrenaline soaring, making the first part of what should be a simple and lackluster fight of dodging her and then feeding her some overpowered ball and chain action way more entertaining than it should have been. But that's just the warm-up for this frozen fight. With the top-down bird's-eye view of the battle, you can clearly see in the reflection of the slick, mirror-like ice on the floor where exactly Blizzetta is planning on dropping her spiky ice boulders, and just how to dodge them and set up a counterattack with your ball and chain. Seemingly just in time for the music to kick up more as you start to gain the upper hand, and now you need a new set of pants again. But this time for a different reason. How do you make a classic boss fight? Get locked in a small room with the beast. Make the boss large. Scary. On fire. Give them chains as weapons to whip at you. And make them stumble quickly towards you in a terrifying manner. Virus doesn't have any major spectacles of awesome or amazing ziplining monkeys or ancient skateboarding Beyblades. But what it does have is the perfected basics of a cut and dry, meat and potatoes, simple boss fight, where the means to defeat such a foe are as plain and simple as poking them in the eye and tripping them so they fall down to your level and then slash away at their head until the job is done. But how this is accomplished is what makes it seem far from ordinary. Using the bow, you blind Virus by shooting him in the eye, causing him to wander around randomly to regain his composure. At this point, you can use your iron boots on the magnetic floor to anchor yourself, grab a hold of his large shackles, and trip him up using his own momentum. Now his weak spot is available for the slashing. And slash away you do. And after a couple times of going to town on his head with your blade, the fight is over. And knocking down this massive muscular monster with your much tinier frame is incredibly pleasing, and a great confidence booster leading into the even more uplifting cutscene afterwards. There comes a point in Twilight Princess where you need to get way up into the clouds to reach a mirror shard. So you invest a small fortune into cannon development and launch yourself skyward. Then, once you reach the city in the sky, you need to climb to the very top of the tallest building, get to its roof, and then claw shot up its towers to the very peak of the world and fight a fire-breathing dragon. If that doesn't sound like the most climactic thing in existence, I don't know what does. And the very fact that you encounter this menacing dragon terrorizing the city earlier on in the dungeon makes it feel just that much more personal. Now the fight itself is relatively simple, really, but as we've seen several times earlier on this list, that's not a bad thing in the slightest. The first stage of the Argorok fight has you climb up one of 4 towers to claw shot onto his extremely obvious tail hook and use the weight of the iron boots to drag him down to earth and pack the ground. Pretty cool. I mean, it's nothing super oh god, there goes the rest of his armor. Now he's pissed. At this point, the rain and thunderstorms set in, pea-hats rise from the dirt, and the sheer fact that you have to Spider-Man back up the towers and around on the floating pea-hats way up high as Argorok spews flames at you is adrenaline pumping to say the least. And that is even before you get around behind him, claw shot onto his back, mount the son of a bitch, and proceed to stab the ever-living shit out of his exposed weak spot gem on his back. Plunging him back down to earth while intense music plays in the background is more than enough motivation to get you to reclimb the towers and do it again. In fact, it would have been hard not to want to do it again. This has been Mabus, and just like it did with its dungeons, Twilight Princess once again delivers consistently throughout the game when it comes to the quality of its bosses. And although its mini-bosses weren't able to make the cut for this list, there will definitely be a time and place for them. So in the meantime and in between time, stay tuned for more.